Light from Lantern presents Knit a Spell. I'm Magical Maker Katie Rempe.
And I'm the Maker of Magic, James Devine.
Join us as we stitch together the symbiotic relationship between crafting
and the craft.
Welcome once again to another exciting episode. Jim, what do we have on tap today?
We have an amazing guest. We have Thomas of Hermit's Mirror.
Woo! Yes.
Thomas is a tarot coach, the creator of Lifeline Tarot and the Lifeline Lenoracle decks, the author of Tarot Tableau, a guide to transforming your tarot readings through Lenormand cartomancy. He is an amazing human who I got to interview on my Meet a Mystic series on Instagram. I am so thrilled that he's here. Welcome, Thomas, to Knit a Spell.
Woohoo! Welcome.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
I knew we needed to have you on as a guest as soon as I saw your beautiful tarot and Lenoracle decks that Jim had. Literally saw them right away and was like, oh, now that's a deck for someone who's perhaps not a beginner, but like anyone who knows a little bit about tarot is going to be super inspired by the artwork. It is wonderful.
Well, I think it's also the Hermit's Mirror and the Light from Lantern connection, right, Katie?
Yes, that is my other burning question. So obviously, I also have a lantern in my logo situation, which was like a whole struggle when I was developing the brand and whatnot. So I'm curious how and why and whatnot you also chose the lantern for yours.
Yeah, so the name Hermit's Mirror comes from the Hermit card and the Moon card, which are both numerological 9, which is my life path and my destiny path, if you know numerology. And so both of those cards shine light in the darkness. And the sort of tarot work that I tend to do focuses more on shadow work and bringing out or awakening. That's sort of my most recent work, is about like bringing out that light and that source of energy. And so the lantern seemed very fitting. That said, I may be changing my logo next year. I'm not sure. But it has the lantern sort of is the crux of both the Hermit and the Moon for me. I don't really care about the old man in a cloak, but it's the light that he carries.
That is exactly why I also wanted to do that. I'm also a life path 9, which is funny. I've never met another
Beautiful.
9 so far. So hello. Yeah, that's so interesting. Same with like the whole knitting thing. I was like, oh, I want to teach people certain things. I want to show them how to incorporate magical things into their knitting since it's already so meditative. Shine light on that, show them the way. What better way to do that than the literal lantern? So,
well, and so it's funny, you're a Virgo as well.
That's correct.
As well, excuse me. And so I didn't realize that I was a Virgo moon at the time. I had the wrong birth time until February of this year, and it changed my moon sign from Leo to Virgo and my rising sign back. I got the Leo back in the rising sign when that changed. And so the Virgo moon was like so on point. It was a little scary.
Yeah.
The Hermit and the Moon coming together. So
it was meant to be.
Yeah, it was. So we have that Virgo connection too.
We sure do. Oh my gosh.
That's so cool.
Do you have also more ideas and things that you like obsess about than you could possibly do in one day? It's just like list making.
I in fact have, well, it's not in this room, but I have a list of all of the things that I want to work on because I normally keep it in a notes in my computer or my phone. And I just lose it constantly. And like I have to search for it and it feels outdated by the time I get back to it. So now I have it written on paper and I actually have divined into each of the ideas and said like, okay, this is like this card is I'm associating with this project. Like I'm not going to work on it now. I'm going to work on this thing and this thing and this thing because otherwise it's just totally overwhelming. And the stuff that I, will never get to or that doesn't come back around, I realize probably isn't so important. But I have a hard time letting go.
I feel you there. Oh my gosh, that is a brilliant way to use the cards. And again, something I think I'm going to put into play since we have that little quality in common.
So
again,
cool.
It's a decision-making tool. You don't always put together how you could use it in like everything. So, so the interesting thing about your Lifeline theme here is that in knitting, a lifeline is like the saving grace of your potential knitting disaster. It's used in like lace work or something really fancy, or maybe something you're not exactly sure about and you might know ahead of time you're going to take it down a little bit. But essentially, you just thread a literal lifeline, just a scrap of yarn, through the stitches you're currently working in. And then you would mark it like, oh, I'm on this part of the repeat or something, so that maybe halfway up the next one, you go, oh no, it's gone terribly awry. And it's not so easy just to unpick it one stitch at a time. So you just rip it back down to the lifeline, and everything there is like setting, waiting for you. It's just like, oh, it's so nice. It's a good connotation in knitting.
Nice. Yeah, I was not aware of that.
See, it was meant to be. Actually, it's funny because looking at the art, I even thought, gosh, it kind of looks like yarn. Like if you just sort of threw it from a ball and
Yep.
it looks like yarn. Even one of the cards, I thought, oh, I think this is me. He drew me in this. It's the muse maybe, with like essentially carrying maybe 2 balls of yarn in like a flaming glory. I was like, oh yeah, I love this card.
I love that. The muse is you. I hadn't realized the string thread connection at first until someone brought it up, and I wrap all of my decks, at least the ones that I, currently I'm delivering them all myself or shipping them all myself. I wrap all of them in consecrated string. So there is like a literal string that holds them together, but yeah, thread is very important in my own work. Yeah.
That's really funny. I actually kept your string because I was like, oh, I'm going to do knot magic with this. It's really nice. So maybe I just knew. I don't know. It's funny. Yes, that is the card.
So if you're watching our YouTube, I'm holding up an example of the Lifeline Tarot. And so this is one of the 2 extra cards that Thomas has drawn. So will you describe for everyone, Thomas, the cards? How are these cards? So for people who are just listening and aren't seeing the visual, give us a description of the Lifeline Tarot and how they're the same or different from tarot cards people might be familiar with. And these 2 extra cards, if you will.
Yeah, for sure. So the Lifeline Tarot takes the sort of classic imagery of Pamela Coleman Smith's illustrations for the Rider or the Waite or the Smithwaite Tarot, however you want to rebrand it now. And it strips it down to a single line. So I call it single line-ish because I did take my stylus off of the digital surface while I was drawing it, but I always put it back where it belonged. Because those who have done digital work will know, you often get stray marks. And if you want to undo them, if you undo a single line, the whole thing goes away. So I did that one too many times. Yep. And I said, I'm going to lose my mind if I keep doing this to myself. So I figured I would fudge it a little bit. But it's single line drawings, that sort of abstract, messy thing that you probably did in elementary school at one point to try to tap into your, I think, the right side of your brain. The more creative, intuitive side. And so it invites you to fill in the missing pieces because there are a lot of gaps, especially in the minor arcana. You have very few of the figures. You just have sort of the implements themselves and maybe a hint of the scene that's going on there in the original illustrations. And so you're invited to like step into that world and look around and say like, well, what's missing? How does this feel? Or like to actually get into the moment and what do I notice? What do I take away? And then the benefit is that sort of mess that you described, Katie, of the yarn being tossed and dropped to see where it lands. There are a lot of patterns that are created unintentionally that allow your mind to scry, which is a form of divination that I sort of accidentally learned as a little kid.
Oh, sometimes you just got to fall into it like that is meant to be, right?
Yeah.
So a couple of the cards I looked at and I was like, oh, like totally different meanings just by what was left out. One of which is, of course, me. I always go after 9 and 13. That's my birth date. It's like the numbers that follow me everywhere. So I'm like Hermit and Death. It's like the same card. And if you put these 2 next to, well, especially Death, there's no skeletal element in there. And in fact, it just looks like like a knight card without a face. He's just an empty like shell, and I just loved that. I was like, oh, like it kind of gave me a whole new meaning around the knight cards too. I thought, oh, it kind of has like a similar energy I never really picked up on. So having not having all of the imagery of the things I quote expect to see, just like you said, it really opens up new meanings because your brain isn't bored by what it is expecting to see. So yeah, all new meanings. I just so highly recommend this deck. And I really love that you made all the pip cards actual playing cards too. You can take out all the major arcana and still use them as playing cards. I've been doing that too. And again, what a fun way to use them as divination. An actual playing card. Duh. Like that's what they were. And so yeah, it's been very mind blowing. Again, my weekend this weekend, what weekend? It's gonna be cards. So
that's very exciting. That's the best way to spend the weekend.
Yeah, I agree. So
you added 2 cards to the deck. You have this one, which is the Muse. This is what Katie said. Looks like Katie with 2 balls of yarn hanging down from her hands, right? That's how Katie interpreted it. Yep. Sort of these, they're either angel wings or maybe they're flames or who knows what they are, right? This is a really great card to just sort of like make imagination on what it is, right? Mm-hmm. So that's really a cool card.
Yeah, the Muse is one of 2. The other one is the Labyrinth.
Here's the Labyrinth, which is a lot more clear, like, oh yeah, that's a labyrinth.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of people, if they haven't downloaded the guide, because it doesn't come with a paper booklet, I am looking at getting some mini paper booklets printed so that I can slide those in the remaining decks. But if they haven't looked up the free digital guide online, they're like, what is this card? It's just MS. Like, what does that stand for? Because there are no vowels on the cards either. And in that case, the Muse is sort of lacking without her vowels. But she was inspired by an illustration that I did, I think in, summer of 2020 or something, for an archetype oracle deck that I haven't gotten very far on, to be honest. But she was sort of the translation of the Empress, I want to say. And so I was taking some of my favorite tarot cards, translating their shapes into new archetypes, or sort of like tangential archetypes, non-obvious ones. So that illustration is inspired by the Empress in the Muse Tarot. And originally she was going to be the mirror mage. So what she's actually holding are 2 black obsidian mirrors in the original drawing, but in this sort of abstraction, it could be anything. And then it wasn't feeling right. Like I was like, it's sort of forced. I don't love it. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh, the Empress sort of like elevated or taken down a tangent becomes the Muse. And I was like, oh, duh, this is from the Muse Tarot. How did I not think of that? So you can find that image way back in my feed on Instagram. So the Muse is the Muse and the Labyrinth are sort of 2 different contrasting elements that I think are really helpful when reading tarot. So the Muse is sort of like a spirit guide, sort of like your personal guardian angel, but she's really inside of you. And she's a sign that you have everything that you already need at your disposal. And you can look to external sources for validation, but you don't need to. She's sort of like, she is the sign that things are like where they need to be in a lot of ways. And a card of personal empowerment. The Labyrinth, on the other hand, is like, things may look like a mess right now. But if you just take that sort of higher perspective and look down from above, you'll actually be able to find your way out fairly easily. So one is the true internal power. And then the other is like, okay, we need to remove ourselves and get much more external to see the full picture. And the Labyrinth, I don't know if it was intentional or not. When I planned it, I sort of realized it in the process, but in the myth of the Labyrinth, they find their way out with a string. So.
Oh my gosh.
Wow. With a string.
That's so funny.
There's so many connections.
Yeah. And it was that, I promise that was not intentional, because as I said, it was only after someone later told me like, oh, this reminds me of string. I was like, duh, that's part of my work. Why did I not intentionally think of that? But I'm sort of glad it was accidental.
Yep. See, again, it was just meant to be a good synchronicity to let you know you're on the right path, I guess. And
Yeah.
it's, again, the muse is funny. I'm like, I've never lacked self-confidence, I guess, or something. So I remember thinking this morning, like, oh, this card is me. And then thinking, like, oh my God, I have some balls to think, like, oh, yeah, it's me. You know, like, oh, wow, this is, come on. But I guess that makes sense. If it's your personal empowerment, then there you go. I'm just embracing it, perhaps.
Well, it's what
it.
Thomas just said, is that card is you. The muse is in you, right? So
Exactly.
you intuited that. What's interesting to me, I'm curious your reflection on this, Thomas. I think that symbolism, you know that something is truly a symbol because the more that you look at it, the more meaning, the more that it produces meaning, the more synchronicities it can sort of generate, the more that, you know, it continues to produce more and more and more for us, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what's interesting is you're talking about how your symbols, the symbols that you've produced, seem to be, you know, you said you use some scrying, you know, are using sort of spiritual sort of, you know, channeling in some way. I don't think you use those words, but it appears that you were letting sort of spirit work through you in some of the creative process here. And these symbols continue to provide more meaning and more information as it goes. What do you think are the nature of a symbol, and what is your experience with this? Are you finding more in the decks that you've created from when you created them? Do they still deliver for you?
Oh, yeah. I mean, they definitely do. So one of the things that I sort of added as a bonus for those who are into this sort of thing on the Lifeline Tarot, on one of the flaps of an inner flap of the tuck box, there's a little symbol. It sort of looks like a jester or like a weird little devil-y guy, but it's a sigil. And so I invite people to sort of write over that if they want to like empower or imbue the deck with the intentions that I set for it to be used with good intentions, for sort of like being able to work goodness and, you know, be prosperous, and however you define that term for yourself as a result, like that it will give back to you as you give to others. And so, yeah, I have sort of drawn back over that in my own deck. And I do sort of try to re-imbue it so that it always stays powerful and relevant to me. But as far as the actual symbols, there are definitely some that seem more prevalent at different times. And I think one of the things about symbols is that you notice them more when they're, you know, relevant to you in that moment. So, for example, like behind me, I have a bunch of like sunset, sunrise, moonset, moonrise, whatever they are, sorts of images, which I didn't really realize until I saw them on camera. But that has been very important for where I am right now in my recent move to like a desert climate where I see the sunrise and the sunset every morning and every evening because there aren't really any clouds. And so like for me, those symbols tend to appear when they're necessary, whereas other ones that may have been like your go-to for a long time, it's okay if they go away because you don't need them right then. And when you do, they'll come back.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like, I mean, not to make like a mundane relation here, but like when you're car shopping, suddenly it's like, all I see are car commercials, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
It's so for people
That's cool.
who are, you know, like artistic in this kind of way, they're not always seen as being, quote, valued. What do you say to artists who need to find some self-confidence in what they have to offer and who have this kind of mindset as someone who is following their artistic dream and actually making things happen?
Yeah, I think, the big thing about it that I think held me back for a while was fear. So I actually was trained artistically and then just put it aside because I was like, well, I'll never make a living off of that. And then this project I didn't really want to put out because I felt very derivative. As it turned out, there were no single line tarot decks. So I like filled a niche that I didn't know was missing. But I didn't want to do it at first. And then a friend of mine suggested, like, oh, why don't you just finish it for you? And then if folks are interested in it, they can order it or they can pre-order it. And then you can see sort of like how it feels when you're done. And so it was that push to say like, you know what, it doesn't have to be anything. as long as you're enjoying the process and it feels meaningful along the way. And then if it happens to be something that you want to place monetary value on, like see if that works out and is sort of like in alignment with what you're trying to do. And, you know, maybe there's a market for it. And if not, for me personally, I didn't like invest years and years in the creation of this deck because it is fairly quick art. But I think, you know, I think a lot of us fear the rejection, particularly if you're more sensitive or open to, you know, if you've been like bullied as a kid or you've sort of been devalued in some way. And so that fear just holds us back from so much. And there are good survival reasons that we may have developed over the years. But at the same time, like I think in this day and age, if you know, there's so many like strange beliefs that people have and have no shame in sharing. And so why not make beautiful art, right? And do something that like moves you and is an inner, like the expression of something that you can't do in any other way. And if you make money off it, great. If you don't, hopefully you enjoyed the process. And if not, then, you know, find a different way of expressing that you will enjoy.
That is such wise advice. In fact, I have a friend who is an amazing artist, and occasionally she will open her personal business for commissions and things. And she would sometimes share her progress over Instagram stories. And she would get comments from people that said, oh, well, you do it so too quick. You do it so quick. Like it's there's no value because you do it too quick. And I said to her, well, but you're just really good at it. So you can do it well quickly. Like what? So I'm sort of curious on what your take on that is. Like, it's none of their business how long it takes you, right?
Right. Well, yeah. So, and that is one of the things, like when I was first being interviewed about the deck by a friend of mine, I told him how short it took me. And he's like, what? That's like, how is that possible? So I did sort of feel bad about charging like, you know, I had $25 or so for the deck because it was a relatively short amount of time to create it. But that's also why it's relatively cheap for an indie deck, at least. And I think, you know, if the speed itself can carry a lot of value, like for folks who really resonate with the deck, one of the things that they love about it is just like the instant, sort of like the instant kapow of it, right? Like it will often just hit you, or you will like sense energy coming out of it. Like a lot of people hear things in the images, even though obviously they're not like saying anything, or they will like get a sense of movement in the images because it was done so quickly that energy can carry it with you. I mean, that may not relate to your friend's particular form of artwork, but I think that there can be value even in the process if it's fast or if it's slow, right? Like it carries that energy with it. And I think, you know, as a culture, we tend to overvalue challenge.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, like if something is hard, that doesn't make it good. Like it just may be hard for you. And that's great that you want to challenge yourself and like push yourself to overcome something that may feel like a weakness to you. And you want to like give it your all. But depending on what you're doing, that may not be like the best trade-off. And as someone who, you know, we were talking about Virgo, right? Like you have that perfectionism. All three of us have that in common.
Yes.
You know, like I spend hours and hours like tweaking things in my book designs that literally no one will ever see. Like it is not a good use of time, but it does, like it is important for me.
Yes.
Totally.
So I
think we can all feel that one.
art.
Yeah.
I'm like, ouch. I feel that. Okay. I think the thing that's really important that I am super aware of is the years of practice and that it's taken me to get to the point where something becomes easy. Because I can say that I can read someone's palm. I can read anyone's palm. It doesn't matter who. I am no longer at a point where I'm intimidated, no matter who it is. The President of the United States, the Queen of England, will be no different for me in reading their palm from anyone else in the world. Like seriously, like it can be the person who I admire the most, like my most favorite celebrity or my most favorite it doesn't matter. I can read their palm and it doesn't bother me. And it's really effortless to read someone's palm. It's like the easiest thing I do in my life. And it's the thing that I charge the most to do. And that is exactly kind of the thing that you're talking about, Thomas, is, wow, how that feels really weird to have the thing that's the easiest for me to do to be the thing that I charge the most for. But I also am forgetting it's 35 years of practice, of study, of experience. It's like my entire life's work being put into that. Your ability to do those Lifeline drawings is a whole bunch of actual formal training in art, of an entire lifetime of artistic expression and magical training and study of the tarot, right?
And digital drawing skills. Just throwing that
right,
there.
because Adobe Illustrator is actually really easy to learn just in 3 seconds, right?
Yeah.
Learning is, I mean, if that's what you were using, Illustrator is by itself a whole thing to learn that takes years, right? Mm-hmm. It drives me crazy. Or maybe you're using some other program, but whatever that is, it's like, oh my gosh. So I think that's the thing that I think a lot of people, a lot of artists, we ourselves forget to value the years of training and work that has made what we're doing, quote, easy or fast. But I wonder what your thoughts are about that.
Yeah, I think, so I actually just thought of someone commissioned me to do a rather large painting. And so I ended up charging them, essentially the materials and what I thought was like a good hourly rate. And it wasn't my best work. And I charged more for it because it took longer, because it was sort of a slog to get through. Similar to maybe Katie, actually different from the examples that you were talking about, Katie, with your friend. But like, just because it took longer doesn't mean that it was better at the end of the day. I mean, there may have been more technical finesse in some of it, right? Because that craft can take time depending on the technique. But, some of the things that I just like give to my friends that are made from the heart and just have like so much more in them. Like, I don't know, there's something intangible that can be carried with the art. It doesn't have to be. But I do think that, when you're in the moment of genius, right, where like all time goes away, you don't really think about like logging hours on a clock. Like, it may feel really easy, and as if you shouldn't be rewarded for that, but it's because you're doing the right thing, you're doing it the right way, and it's all sort of like working out for the best, and you shouldn't punish yourself for that. So that's, and I think like in the case of, when you can just sort of like instantly look at a hand, and you don't have to go step by step by step by step and take an hour and a half or something to read someone's hand, you can just very instantly see all of the important things. I'm guessing, I'm not sure if that's how it works for you, but you're like, we can lie to the client and say like, oh, I need to spend like hours doing this thing, or just say like, you're going to get the same information that you need at the end of this. I'm just not going to waste your time in the like delivery of it in that case.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yes. And knitting is the same way. I mean, like, I could look at anybody's knitting project, no matter what they're working on, even if I don't know what it is. And if they're like, oh, I messed something up, I could fix it. And like, I have no fear of it. I can just like knit it, stop, throw it on the couch. Like, people are like, oh my gosh, you're going to drop the stitch. I'm like, no, what are you talking about? So yeah, you're right. It's you start to write off what becomes comfortable. But it's not comfortable for most people, which is why it's a valued skill. So yeah, that's a great thing to keep in mind, Jim. And you're right. I think having like a quick energy of something sometimes is your best work. You just have to like jump into the flow of it sometimes, whether it's, a quick drawing of something that inspires you, or you're like, oh, I got to knit this hat real quick because I saw some yarn that I was like, oh, suddenly I know this design that it's going to be. So yeah, it's all about kind of leaning into your medium of choice. Very interesting.
So cool. So you were just talking, Thomas, about giving gifts, like you're making something for a friend. How do we gift things that are good enough to offer others? Or really, I'm curious about like, how can magic be gifted?
I think it depends on the recipient. So there's some people who like things, and there's some people who like experiences. For me, I like to do things that people, I mean, so I should say the way that I think magic works, even something like the sigil that I was mentioning earlier, like you have to, someone can't just give that to you. You have to participate in the creation of it in order for it to work. And so gifting them something that they can actually participate in, I think is really valuable. So I know, Katie, you have some things along this line related to making. I'm excited to hear more about. But something like that, where you are essentially either giving them the ingredients, or it's like 90% done, and then they just have to sort of like finish it off. That can be really powerful to me if it's something like magical. Because if I just give them the thing, then personally I worry that like I'm now controlling the intentions of it, and that's not how I think magic should be used. And so by letting them finish it off, or like the sigil, draw over it, recreate it for themselves, like that gives them the control of how it actually functions for them. And I think that that's sort of, for me, that's like an important ethical line.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, great thing to consider. Yeah. Certainly making the gift usable or appropriate for the person is awesome. Very similar to like your tarot cards, giving them to someone who's like brand new beginner, just trying to learn, maybe a little bit more difficult. However, it also could be quite inspiring, much like our Fearless episode where we talked about how if you don't know anything and you don't know what you don't know, you might actually get a lot more out of it. So just depends on the personality type, I suppose. So
yeah, if they have a learning mindset, they could get a lot out of that, right?
Yeah, I was just teaching my niece tarot the other day, and she's like already picking it up so well that I feel like she easily could have picked up something like this and been like, oh yeah, no problem.
Katie, how do you think magic can be gifted?
So for the making side of things, obviously it's a little different in my mind. Making things isn't always the best way to use, I think, your making magical talents, because you can become easily overloaded with generosity. Like, oh, I want to make a hat for this person and that person and this person. And oh, now they're asking for this and that. And then suddenly this beautiful gift you wanted to offer with your energy becomes like, like a burden, and what you might be putting into it isn't great, and who knows if they get done, and then that could be weighing on you and the other person for who knows how long. And so it's, I think, important to learn your boundaries when it comes to your magical making capabilities. And then, like for me, I would offer a lottery for the family. Like, if you want a handmade item for me this year, put it all in the basket and I'll choose two, and I'll just take those out, and the next year I'll choose two from who's remaining until I'm done, and we can put them all back if you want, and then we're all cool. So I think putting some boundaries of around what you can and want to give around a season that's already very taking is really important.
Yeah, that's cool. We have a tradition of at our Yuletide, everyone brings a small handmade item. It doesn't have to be. It can also be a magical item. But if it's one small handmade item and everyone brings one, and then we sort of, it's a divinatory thing where someone is the sort of Santa character and just reaches into the pile, and it just goes to whoever like it randomly goes to. And it's really amazing how it ends up working out, right? And because they're all handmade, you just get to make one, but then everyone gets something unique or interesting. That's a really fun way to sort of like use a divinatory process. Or just the luck of the draw really is what it is. And you just end up with something sort of magical and handmade from someone. And then everyone only needs to make one thing. So that's a really kind of a fun way we do it with our magical group. And I know that a lot of families that are big do that, like draw a name, so that we don't end up with like having to buy 13. Everyone buys 13 gifts for all the 13 people. And then you're like, right. 13 things to throw away.
Yeah. One of the nice things about that is that then they get the thing and the experience, because the experience of the divining, the experience of watching someone else receive the thing, as a surprise, the experience of like, oh, who's going to get this, right? All of that is in itself a gift. And I think for a lot of us, like opening the gift is like half of the gift. The thing may be good or may be bad. It almost doesn't matter. It's sort of like, oh, what fun surprise is in this? And even if you're not the one opening it, you get to experience that vicariously a little bit.
That's right. And we do wait for each person to open it before the next person gets it. So it is kind of like that fun of like, kind of like when you do the white elephant and there's always that gag gift or that silly gift and you get to laugh about that, foam wax unicorn candle that always ends up back in the office pool every year that everyone is like, oh no, until it's popular.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I think we have a lot to talk about in our second half. Mm-hmm. So let's take a little break. And when we come back, let's talk a lot about the gift of experiences and readings and the magic of avoiding the supply chain backup, because we have some hints for the magic of that.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Stick around. We'll be right back. It's the season for giving. I love the idea that people should give a pattern from Light from Lantern, download a pattern from Ravelry, wrap it up with a beautiful skein of yarn. That would be such a great gift under the Christmas tree or the holiday tree, or the Hanukkah menorah, or whatever
beside
holiday you're celebrating.
Log. Yes.
Not too close to the Yule log. Don't burn it. Wouldn't it be a cool gift to give? You can find all of Light from Lantern's patterns on Ravelry. You can find links to all of those at lightfromlantern.com, or you can follow her on Instagram at Light from Lantern. Subscribe to her newsletter. Super awesome.
Yes.
So do that.
I also know of a great gift that you can give that is never out of stock, and that is a digital gift card of a divine hand reading from one amazing James Divine. Yes.
True.
You can do this at thedivinehand.com. Follow along on his Instagram, Divine Hand Jim. And if you haven't signed up for his newsletter at this point, you're missing out on all sorts of amazing mudras, helpful hints and tips to get you through the holiday season, and maybe even like a super exclusive discount on an upcoming class or course that we don't even know about yet. So don't miss out. And we're back. So in this half, I'm particularly interested in the idea of gifting readings because I do see it as a form of art. And as someone who is going back home for the holiday season, I kind of think having, especially like your Lenoracle cards, which are kind of like a little bit more subtle, might be fun ways for me to offer readings to folks who may be a little more intimidated of the tarot deck. So I'm kind of curious what your feedback is on that.
Yeah, so one of the reasons why I wanted to do sort of standard playing cards is for that like stealth aspect. So if you essentially got rid of the box, you would just have a deck of cards that no one knew what was going on with them other than you. And you can sort of do tarot readings with playing cards. But I thought, why not just do the playing cards as playing cards? You can do those readings, or you have these little symbols that remind you of either the Lenormand interpretation or the related but different oracle interpretation. And so, you get to do like a stealth read for them. And if they're not into it, then you're just playing cards.
There you go. Yeah, I love that. And again, I love that they're red and blue and not the black. I mean, there's black in like the line drawings and everything, but, and you did mention it in your book. You're totally right. It gives it a much more friendly feel almost. Like for me, black and red is like early 2000s Hot Topic clothes. So I have like a weird connotation with that color combo. Yeah. Like easy fast fashion goth. So, but like these are just so elegant and wonderful. And the blue really adds just a little bit of like, I don't know, a little bit of extra energy in there. I really like that subtle change.
I'm glad. Yeah, it was, I was worried it would be controversial because red and black are quite important for playing card readers because the black cards in playing card are usually bad. And so that sort of like heaviness of the black card, the spade and the club are, it carries over with that. And that's still there with the symbology of the spade and the club. But it is, I think, like you said, it's a little bit softened by the blue.
Yeah. Yeah. Plus is like my printing brain is always like never black, always darkest gray. So it almost doesn't really read it like a blue if you're not kind of paying attention and you're used to just seeing black. You probably are just not really even going to pay too much attention to it if you're more of a playing card reader, I'm guessing, but I guess we'll see. Yeah, that's funny that you'd think, oh, there's going to be an uproar in the playing card community.
Oh, yeah.
This
No.
color. Yeah. There are things I think about, too. And then I'm like, no one cares. No one cares.
Yep.
Nobody cares.
Now back to what we were
peop-
talking about in the first half.
Exactly.
For people who know the Lenormand cards, I don't know how to pronounce that word. How do you
Who
pronounce
knows? I say
Lenormand?
Okay.
Lenormand. Some people say Lenormand.
Lenormand? Yeah.
I mean, she's dead. They weren't her cards anyway. I don't think it matters.
So
Good call.
you told me this, but I think the Lenormand cards are only. I know that a regular playing card deck is 52 cards because I played 52 card pickup once where my older cousin. I thought it was a fun game, but then I found out it was not. So I know a card has 52 decks. A deck has 52 cards. Lenormand deck has what, 34 or 32
36.
or something? 36. Okay.
Mhm.
So there's some cards so this is a full playing card deck that you have. So you've added cards. Is that true? It's like 2 through 6 or something, or 2 through 5?
Yeah, the 2s through 5s are new. Those are not part of Lenormand. I mean, and I should say Lenormand, they are associated with playing cards with the 6s through kings and aces, but they're not normally depicted as playing cards. It's normally like an inset, or they're just totally ignored. And I thought, that's not fun. I like playing cards. Let's make it more fun. So then I had to add in, or I chose to add in the 2s through 5s so that I could give it more of a playing card focus or visual recognition, right? For that sort of stealth play, if you just want to play cards with them, and bring out the fun of divination and cartomancy. And so I had to figure out, like, okay, what would be an appropriate symbol for this suit? Because there are, it's not structured around the playing cards, but they do have playing card suit and number associations. And so I, again, Virgo moon, wanted to make sense of the structure. Like, it's not that people don't talk about it as far as I've read in Lenormand, because that's not the focus, right? It's on these symbols, it's on this different tradition. But I figured, like, okay, I can see some things that are similar between most of the cards within this suit. So let me focus, like, let me bring that into the 2s through 5s. And then I had to think, okay, what would be appropriate for the Victorian era, where all of these illustrations are from, and sort of where I was going with the original, like, source aesthetics, if you will. And that's how I came up with what was going to be in each suit. And then I tried to match, like, okay, how are the 5s working? Or how are the odd numbers working? How are the even numbers working? What am I bringing from numerology to make sense of, like, where I want each card to go? And some of them don't fit that. Like, the cat is the 2 of spades, and that's solely because the dog is the 10 of hearts. So I was like, what's as opposite as I can get in the system that I have? All right, I'm going to go with 2 of spades. But it works out, and that helped inform how I would interpret and describe the purpose of that card, so that it would fit within sort of my understanding of the systems I was interpreting.
Oh.
So cool.
Organizational makes me so happy.
Right.
Well, this needs to have a reason. How is this going to work? Well, how's this going to work? Well, then how is this going to work? Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's delicious. It's fabulous.
And so here's the other thing. When cards, or when decks come with extra cards, I love using all of them. Like, unless I'm doing, like, a game where that might really screw something up, I suppose. If I'm doing, like, divination, I use them all. Like, I want to use all of them, not just like the ones that are actually the cards, but, like, I want the one that has, like, the explanation, because
really?
there's
Okay.
probably going to be information on here at some point that I'm going to draw, and one of those words is going to be, like, really important, especially, like, next to something else. And also I was like, well, he needs to be there. Like, this is his deck. He might have some interesting
Oh, you mean like
information
the
to tell me.
extra cards?
So extra.
Yeah.
They're the same, but, like, the backs are this.
Yeah.
And I figured, well, I mean, they're probably meant to be in there in certain situations. So why waste all that hard work? I won't. Same with those. Any extras, put them in. Put them in.
We didn't even talk about the extra Ace of Hearts that you put in,
Oh my God,
right?
Yep.
Which have
Yeah, so there are 3 aces of hearts and 3 aces of spades to offer a broader representational range, if you will. And also, if people say, so in Lenormand, the ace of hearts has traditionally been the male significator, and the ace of spades is the female significator. And it's, you as the querent, and then your primary love interest is sort of the opposite and assumes this heterosexual pairing. I didn't love that, right? Some people, you can like keep it and just say like, all right, we figure it out. We know how it works. There are cards, somewhat potentially homophobic, that can be associated with sort of homosexual partners that are not those sort of 2 ace significators. But I thought like, well, let's have some people who are ambiguous in their representation. So they might be non-binary, or they might be, you might have visibly masculine, visibly feminine in the same suit. And so you could play with those in different ways. So my hope is that people find something close to them, if not themselves, in one of those 6, and then someone who they might find their primary romantic partner in the other. Or if they have more than one primary romantic partner, like that's part of reality too. So why not throw them in? If you have multiple partners, or there are multiple people of interest, and you just assign each one because they do look different. Like there's a different image on them. So you weren't confused by saying like, oh, I don't remember which, ace of spades this is.
Oh, that's a great idea. Yes,
But
I will be using that.
what I think is also cool is your tarot and your Lenormand decks are the same size. So it's kind of cool to think about throwing one of those ace of hearts into your tarot, or like kind of, you could do a little bit of that, which is really interesting to think about. I just realized in this moment that would be fascinating to do.
Yeah, and I had thought about going with a different printer for the Lenoracle, and decided I liked the feel of the tarot cards, and I wanted them to be almost not interchangeable because they do it for different backs, but so that they could play together fairly well and give like a similar or shared experience.
I was going to ask about that, because one of the card games I do play, because I'm like 100-year-old woman at heart, no offense, is Canasta. And you need 2 decks. And I thought, I'm going to have to buy another Lenoracle deck. And then I thought, hello, I could probably just use the tarot cards that are the number cards, just the same. So, all right. I feel like that's you giving me the blessing to do that, right?
All right. What was the card game you grew up playing, Thomas?
Oh, yeah. You asked that when we chatted previously, and I never answered it. So the one that sort of sticks out most is a Dutch game called Klafferjassen, which is sort of like a trick playing. It's sort of like a euchre situation where there are points based on the rank or the number associated with it. You don't play with the whole deck. And so I've always enjoyed those sorts of like 4-person trick-taking games like euchre, right? That is remembering euchre.
Yeah, that's the game I grew up playing, is euchre.
Yeah.
Not well known.
So,
people don't know the game you mentioned. I've never heard of. That's amazing. But very few people know the game euchre as well.
Oh, I could not learn. Yeah. It's too
Katie,
over my head.
euchre is a very simple game, but Canastas, Canasti,
the most difficult game.
We call it Canasti, and I can never hold all those cards. Jeez, oh man.
Yeah. Oh, I know.
Do you need a tray for them, like in bridge?
I usually need that little like round thing to hold all those. Yeah.
Oh, my mom was like, "You just have to handle them. Figure it out." All right. Great.
I think I recently learned bridge. It was pre-COVID, so like my brain is shot. Right? What are those memories anymore?
It's like 20 years ago.
Right. So I think I learned that. I may be confusing it with another game, but I enjoyed those kinds of games where they're fast, where there is some sort of like subtle unspoken communication that is going through the cards, right? Where you're collaborating with like a silent other, essentially. And so I don't know, that's fun. There's collaboration, there's competitiveness, some conflict. My sister and I actually played Spit a lot growing up. So that's a two-person, like very fast. You like each play cards on top of each other, and then you like slap a pile at a certain point. I sort of forgotten the rules at this point. Gin Rummy was really big. Rummy was really big.
Yeah.
I always forget, like there's gin rummy, and then there's rummy, and two of them are the same.
Oh,
Yeah.
But I think gin rummy is the same as gin.
Yeah.
And then rummy is different.
We play a progressive rummy, a type of progressive rummy. That's a lot of fun. Yeah. So these card games you grew up with was part of the inspiration for your decks, right? That was
Yeah. I mean, so like we talked about in the first half, right? Like cards themselves are like games, and tarot cards were card games originally, right? And so bringing in that fun and that lightheartedness, because a lot of tarot work is very heavy, and it can be very heavy, or it can be taken overly seriously. Sometimes it should be taken seriously, right? Like you're digging into heavy stuff, but it's not all like doom and gloom all the time,
yes.
right? You're bringing that lantern into the darkness. You're bringing a little light with you. And so by having them be playing cards, part of it was I wanted to invoke that feeling of fun, encourage people to have a little bit more appreciation of like the lightheartedness, as well as the heavy, deep dark work that you can be doing as well on yourself. And then the other part was, I wanted people to like take them on the go. So they're smaller, they're bridge size. And, they're a hardier, just sort of like playing card stock. So you don't have to worry about like, oh, if I ding it, it's going to like the gold foil is going to flake off, which I have a lot of sort of what I call ritual decks, right? Where they have all the bells and whistles. Like I'm not taking them to a coffee shop because I'm going to spill coffee on them. Whereas I've spilled coffee on my Lenoracle and I don't care. Like it doesn't affect how I read them because they are meant to be a little bit, more quick and dirty.
Yeah.
Less precious, encouraging you to actually use them. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm the kind of person who had to get over like collecting things as to not use them for the wrong purpose and thus waste them, like stickers. When I get stickers now, I'm like, okay, I have to use this immediately. Otherwise, it will sit on a shelf for years. So yeah, I love that.
Well, I think about the tradition of the Christmas holiday stems from Saturnalia, in part from Saturnalia in ancient Rome, when playing games was part of it. That was a big part of it, right? And we also think about Northern Europe when people were stuck inside in these snowy times and, socked in with the winter time. In this dark time of the year that we're approaching in December, that is part of what the holidays are for, is this time of enjoying ourselves. We get often to get so stressed out with family and holidays and obligations. And this is a time to bring some play, bring some of that light from that lantern into the darkness, right? And I really love this idea. So let's give everyone some magical tips on how they can avoid the current post-COVID supply chain tangle. So first, if you can find it in a store in person, just go ahead and buy it, because if it's near you and you can access it and you can buy it, like that's going to be better than, waiting for somebody to come, in the mail, or from what we can see. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm all about like wherever you can, source your things at whatever like level of, you're able to do that, go for it. But what are some of the things that, don't require a supply chain is digital
certificates.
Yeah. So, and also digital gifts, right? Mm-hmm. So, Thomas, what are some of the things you offer that people can purchase? Like, can people purchase a gift certificate, or can I give the gift of you? This is the title of our show.
Oh, yes.
Can I give the gift of Thomas to someone?
Yes.
How do I do that?
At the time of airing this episode, you will be able to. I had gift certificates set up for a little while on my shop, and then I just it was no longer the holiday season, and I just took them down. So you can gift a reading. So I typically do video readings, like live 30-minute or 60-minute readings, depending on sort of the depth or number of topics that someone wants to go into. And you can gift that just by getting the gift certificate, and then they can use it on my website store. Alternatively, you could gift someone a past life, ancestral, or inner child reading, but they have to, like, it's a gift certificate that they have to choose to use, because I will not give a reading to someone who has not explicitly asked me for a reading, because I have done that in the past and it is a terrible idea. Like,
that's right.
The wrong things can be communicated, or someone may not be ready for those things. And they certainly didn't give you consent, or even if they have given you consent, they may feel pressured to have done so. So it may be sort of like a reluctant consent.
Right.
And that can really like mess up the intention of the gift and like your own reading experience.
Mm-hmm.
So they have to use it. Like, it's a gift certificate that they then use. I will not let someone like buy a reading for someone else directly. So it's almost equivalent, but it is different. And then I have digital workbook, a digital workbook, Awaken the Court Cards. I have a book that's currently printing on Amazon and is on Kindle, which we can dive into details, or folks can read the show notes. Either way. And then I have a self-paced class, introductory, like an intensive introduction to tarot, called Read Tarot Like a Nerd. And then I suppose someone could get a gift certificate and then use it on one of my upcoming live classes. So those would all be sort of like digital, no supply chain issue ways of supporting my work. I'm curious about you all, though.
And giving the gift of Thomas sounds amazing. Sounds a little bit dirty.
Yeah.
Hey, whatever the selling angle is,
to my OnlyFans.
But I love it. All right.
I do not have one.
Also, he feels compelled to tell everyone.
Yeah.
Well,
right.
Katie, how do I give the gift of Katie this holiday season?
Oh, well, eventually I'm going to have this Patreon situation going, but I don't know if that's going to happen before the end of the year. So if that's not the case by the...
but that was an amazing preview, everybody.
That's right. Newsletter.
Everybody pressure Katie to start her Patreon.
That's right. There's just so many great things that I'm just not going to let you guys have. Yeah. But right now, you can always give the gift of a digital pattern to perhaps one of your knitting friends or for yourself. You can go right on Ravelry and buy it for them. It's a nice gift to have in your little inbox. And then, of course, if you want to buy the pattern and then make it and give it to someone as a gift, as a made gift, that is the nicest gift of all, your handmade love. So what about you, Jim?
Nothing. I have nothing to. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Only for an exclusive few.
Yes, I have gift cards. So you can buy a Divine Hand gift card off my website at thedivinehand.com. And then that you can actually set it up to deliver like on a holiday or on a birthday. So it'll show up in someone's email box on that day and be like, you have the gift of a palm reading. It's really, really cute how the whole system does that. And then exactly as Thomas is saying, people have to choose to use it. I will not pester people. And some people are like, so you should give it to someone who takes the agency to use it. If people feel pressured to get a reading, it doesn't usually work out. But yeah, it's really fabulous. I've only ever had that happen once in my entire 34 years, that someone was like not into having a reading. And if they're not, we can transfer it to someone else. It's fine. We'll figure it out. So yeah, you can give the gift of a palm reading. That's mainly the things that I do. And I do offer courses. And I'm not really using, I guess you could use a gift card for that too. I'll probably be able to use a gift card for anything that I sell on my website or do. We can figure that out. So it's a lot of fun to do that. And the cool thing about all three of us, for everybody, is This is an experience. When you give someone an experience, so why is this magic? Why is this gifting magic? Magic is an act of transformation, in my opinion. Magic transforms a condition. It takes something that was and turns it into something that is, or changes the potential of something, right? And so when you get a reading from Thomas, when you take yarn and turn it into a scarf, when you have a reading from me, this is something magical because the experience of that, you did have something happening and now you have more knowledge. You have a different experience that happened after. That is super magical. That experience stays with that person for a long time. It's magical. Mm-hmm. When you give that gift of magic, wow, that's transformational. It's really amazing. So there's just nothing like it, right? What an amazing, innovative thing to print that out even and put it in someone's stocking or, wrap it in a gift or something like that. It's so much fun to do. Mm-hmm. And you don't have to dust it. You don't have to worry about like giving someone a gift that like doesn't fit or has to be returned or you have to give them a picture of it and be like, it'll be here in 3 weeks, right? Or so the supply chain told me.
Flash 6 months. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's a great way to stitch together experiences with your friends. Probably you're not going to just like have one reading and be like, okay, the end, never thinking or talking about that again.
Right.
You're probably going to have that last with you for a while. So
That's right. A deeply personal experience. I'm going to have a reading with Thomas. It's going to be a private personal experience that I was gifted, that Katie gave me as a gift. I'm just laying a hint. And then I'm going to remember that. And it's, you know what I mean? I'm going to remember that. And I'm going to have like, wow, that was such an amazing thing that I'm going to have for my whole year. Right. What a cool thing. Right, Katie?
Absolutely. Definitely. No. Hold on. I'm clicking through right now.
Waiting.
Right. So Visa starts with...
Okay. So here's what we want to do today. We do an oracle draw.
Yes.
Every episode. Mm-hmm. So what we're going to use, which one do you want to use, Katie?
Oh, the Lenoracle, perhaps?
Oh, I thought we were going to use the Lifeline Tarot.
Oh, either one. That's fine, too. We can do that.
Yeah. Let's use Lifeline Tarot.
All right.
All right. Do you want to use yours?
Do we all want to pull one? And do like a 3-card put together?
Okay, I'm shuffling.
That'll be fun. I can hear.
You can hear the riffle? Ooh, it's ASMR.
That's right. Oh, I always try to do the flip like my mom.
Oh, the bridge? It's hard with 80 cards.
Yeah. The Lenoracle, like no 54. Problem. Yeah.
Yep. Like,
yeah.
Slow to go.
Halfway. And then it's like, done. Yes. All right.
One more. Is
there an area that we're looking into or just like whatever people need to hear?
Yeah, usually it's like sort of our forecast for the week ahead.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Let's just talk about the week ahead. Yes.
All right.
I like this.
Oh, yeah. I like mine. Can you tell?
I like mine. Mine's solid. Are we all going to show at the same time?
Yeah. All right.
Sure.
3, 2, 1. Oh
my.
Interesting. All right. So Jim pulled the Labyrinth. I have the Lovers. And Thomas, what was yours again? Oh,
2 of Wands.
Ooh. All right. So if I was putting this together in a story arc for our all of us collectively for a week ahead.
I know how to do it.
Oh, yeah, do it.
Let's tell a story. And let's have Thomas, you're our guest. Would you mind telling the story of this?
Of the 3 cards?
Yeah. Would you give us a little sample of like, tell us a quick little story of these 3 cards?
Oh yeah, a little preview of
so what I thought of instantly with these 3 cards is that there is this important decision that needs to be made, and you want to balance between sort of your inner voice and your outer voice, but what's sort of missing is this bigger journey to to understand from almost like a metaphysical outer voice. To see like, okay, not just I need to raise up from the perspective of the labyrinth and look down and see everything and make like a logical decision, but I need to be a little bit braver and push even beyond that and sort of like take up the position of the angel and the lovers and enjoy that like mystical journey, almost like an astral travel kind of a situation or a dream that will help me actually make the decision that has been weighing on me for the last, I don't know, few weeks, perhaps, or months.
Beautiful.
So I don't know if this is for you, Katie, with your Patreon. Maybe you're going to have some dreams about it.
Oh, I can't wait.
This reading is actually for everyone listening. So think about how that reading applies to you and what's going on in your life. And that's pretty awesome. What a beautiful interpretation, Thomas. I love hearing how you just roll through that. Your style of reading is so beautiful.
Effortless. Again, just so natural.
And quick.
Yeah, right. Well, yeah. Oh, must be because you're so amazing at it and very skilled.
Years and years of practice.
That's right. Exactly. Yes. You didn't just wake up one day and know how to knit super fast. That's crazy.
I have actually never knitted. I've crocheted and it was heinous. I made a Harry Potter style scarf. And it was
I never recommend a scarf as anybody's first project. It's too long and tedious. Ugh, yeah. Well, maybe we can get you to come over to the fiber side at some point.
I love it. Yeah. I could pick up one of your digital gift packs.
There you go. It's a great way to use a sigil too on your making. Just saying.
Well,
wonderful.
This has been an amazing episode. Thank you, Thomas, for your generosity and your time and your wisdom. It's been so great hanging with you. You can find Thomas on his website,
hermitsmirror.com.
Thomas, you have a newsletter, right?
Yeah, so I send out a newsletter every month. There's almost always a discount code in it, which is sometimes the only reason people read it, but it gives a little synopsis of the last month, what I've been up to, any new services or upcoming courses, that sort of thing. I tend, or at least this year, my lesson for this year was release, right? Release all expectations about planning things, because a bunch of things are coming that you're not going to be able to, you're not going to want to like put on hold just because of some pre-existing plan. So I tend not to like my courses that I'm going to be offering in January and February. Well, by the time you're listening to this, I should have an actual date, but I will announce that via newsletter for sure. The February one, I won't have a date yet, even when you're listening to this. So if you get on the newsletter, you will find out when I will be offering that court card class. But yeah, if there's a special deal that I'm announcing, like the double-decker deal, if you want both the tarot and the Lenoracle deck, like when that came out, I made sure to announce that on the newsletter. I don't bombard you with a bunch of stuff. It's usually just once a month. Or if there's something special, like a surprise book launch, I'll make sure to send a newsletter about that too.
Very good. Gems worth opening.
Yeah, totally worth it. You also have a great Instagram, Hermit's Mirror, at Hermit's Mirror on Instagram. We love following you there. It's awesome. So definitely check him out on all of those places. And you can check out Katie, her website, lightfromlantern.com. You can find links to her patterns, which are on Ravelry, and all of the goings on. Subscribe to her newsletter, which is an awesome newsletter. Katie is, of course, aces and amazing. Oh. So it's fabulous to check her out too.
Well, it takes one to know one, Jim. You can find more about James Devine at thedivinehand.com, where you can get your gift certificates, of course, available in all sorts of sizes, I'm sure.
Only extra large.
There you go. That's the best size. And all of his courses, and plus also his great newsletter, which is always filled with little gems. I love opening that one too, I must say. So yeah, make sure to check him out and make sure to join us next week when we will be back with another exciting episode. Yay!
Yay!
All right.
Well, thanks everyone. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, Thomas, for coming on. Thank you. All right, everybody. We'll see you again next week.
Bye all.
Thanks for listening, everybody. And don't forget, new episodes of Knit a Spell are conjured every Wednesday. Learn more at knitaspell.com and follow our Instagram page at Knitaspell. If you have a quick second to support the show, feel free to drop us a review on iTunes or share this with a friend. Jim and I appreciate your support and look forward to seeing you next week.